Hello, good evening, and welcome to the program. Thank you most kindly for making the time. This is Sunday Politics live on Trust TV. My name is Abdullahi Ahmed. Thank you for joining us once again. Now, after weeks of a somewhat not so productive engagement to negotiate a new national minimum wage, Nigeria is once again at a crossroad with another imminent nationwide strike that could worsen an already bad situation. The impasse in the ongoing negotiations signpost a misalignment between the yearnings and aspirations of organized labor and the government's resolve to cut its coat according to its cloth. Now, the last offer on the table was 60,000 naira, which was outrightly rejected by members of the organized labor. So, where does this all too familiar road lead to? Can Nigerians expect light at the end of this dark tunnel? Joining me on the program tonight to help analyze these developments is Dr. Muttaqa Yusha'u. He's the head of education and training at the NLC headquarters in Abuja. Doctor, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us in the program.
Yeah, good evening, and it's a pleasure for me to be with you this evening.
Good to see you. Right, so before we get the conversation started, in an effort to stave off this imminent nationwide strike action by organized labor, especially given the momentum this nationwide action is going to garner, the National Assembly, the leadership of the National Assembly is currently in an emergency meeting with the leadership of the organized labor in an effort to find a common ground, or at least to pacify the leaders to call off this strike action, which is scheduled for June 3rd, 2024. But before going into the meeting, the leaders had time to speak to their expectations as well as the issues at hand. So let's take a look.
Whatever agreement we come to will be mutually beneficial to all, the government and the workers. So we are all concerned. We are in the same shoe. We are wearing the same shoe, and we'll be very glad to have something that is workable. But we must also be mindful of collateral damage. I don't want us to, in the course of trying to arrive at a minimum wage, we end up with a lot of serious issues of unemployment. Because as soon as we arrive at a minimum wage, we'll expect the private sector to also adhere. And then if they are unable to do so, the next thing will be retrenchment of workers. So we will look at the issues, and as we walk on the tightrope, we must do the balancing act.
And I'm sure some of you will recall what I said during the Independence Anniversary lecture. The one thing that this country and this government can do to eliminate corruption in the long run is to embrace living wage. There is no two ways about it. But we should also be mindful that the mistakes of several decades cannot be repaired within one day. It is going to be a gradual process. We have to start somewhere and then agree to a plan of what we can do to reach that level where every Nigerian worker can beat his chest and say, I am earning enough to put food on the table, enough to take care of my basics. So my own take home for all of us here is to say thank you, the organized labor, for even accepting to come.
Things have been really difficult. In the last 1 year, that difficulty has even further exacerbated. And that is why this year's minimum wage conversation is a bit tough, and it's a bit difficult, because when you are negotiating under a difficult environment, it's always very, very difficult. So this is a special minimum wage negotiations, and for us, it's been the last 3-4 months has been tough, and Nigerians are waiting for us to give them a wage that at least could assist them in paying transportation to work, could feed them, could house them, and clothe them. These are the basic necessity of life. Not even a wage to buy a car or a wage to build a house, but to meet the basic necessity of life.
Brothers, your sisters, and everybody, we are constituents. So, and that is why we must all reason together to find a solution to it. It is not for any of the leadership here. It has to do with all Nigerians and the way forward on this. So we are quite committed to finding a way forward, finding a living wage, finding a survival wage, and not starvation wage for Nigerians. With that, I and my colleagues, we are committed to that.
Well, the leadership of the Organized Labor Day in talks with the leadership of the National Assembly. You did hear from the Senate President, Gov't, speaking about collateral damage, finding a common ground where, according to him, we wouldn't have to deal with something that is going to be of a consequence. He did talk about unemployment being worsened if we do not arrive at a reasonable minimum wage. The Speaker of the House of Representatives also speaking to some of those issues. But you could also hear clearly from the Labour leaders their dissatisfaction with the entire negotiation process, as well as the issues that many Nigerians are dealing with, especially because of the current economic slowdown, the current economic climate, inflation at a high, the highest record so far, plus all of the other underlying issues that led to Labour's decision to decide to go on this indefinite strike action, and also to turn down the 3 various offers that were made during the negotiations at the tripartite committee. A quick reminder, we're speaking to Dr. Muttaqa Yusha'u, who is the head of education and training at the NLC headquarters. Doctor, let's get it started. First of all, how did we get here? A lot of Nigerians reading some of the developments, coming to terms with this particular reality. A strike is imminent, and they're dissatisfied with what the government is bringing to the table, and they're also dissatisfied with the organized labor's positions on so many other issues. Take us through how we got to where we are right now, and what is going to be responsible for us to break this impasse or stalemate that we're struggling with.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. What took us to the situation where we are is the fact that a minimum wage negotiation committee was set up by the federal government, and in that committee all the tripartite partners are represented: government, the private sector represented by Nigerian Employers Consultative Association, and the organized labor represented by the NLC, Nigerian Labour Congress, and the Trade Union Congress. Proposals were made by the state governments also were represented as part of the government, because they also pay salary to their workers at the state level. So proposals, there were public hearings on getting various proposals, taking cognizance of the state of the economy, as well as various indicators such as the inflation in the country, and of course the ability to pay by all the constituents. These are very important parameters. And most importantly for the worker side is what can take a worker. Because if your wage cannot take you home, then there is a problem. So we also look at the parameters. What does it take for a household to survive in terms of transportation, education, the health care, and the rest. So since the committee was set up, what we have noticed in the process is lack of commitment from the side of the government, because in several of the meetings you could find that key stakeholders are not represented. For example, the state governments are not there, and other key ministries. So in a minimum wage negotiation, commitment and having faith in that process is very, very important. And what led us to where we are today is total disrespect of the whole process of minimum wage negotiations. As highlighted by the president of the NLC, we are constituents. And when you are constituents, each constituency will present its own side. then you negotiate. But what we are seeing displaying by the federal government is not a negotiation. It's like imposition, take it or leave it. So that is not how it ought to be. And it is also on notice that the organized labor during the 2024 May Day, on the 1st May, made it clear that given the sluggish nature of the process of engagement and lack of too much commitment from the side of the government, that an ultimatum is given that if at the end of May nothing is done by the federal government, so the organized labor will not guarantee industrial peace. And that is where we are. And this is not a decision of one person. It is a decision of the National Executive Council of both the Nigerian Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress, that workers will down tool if there is any meaning, if there is nothing that is signed by the end of the month.
Given where we are right now with the economy, a lot of people say, listen, we're on board with the Labour trying to get the maximum amount of money that is going to add value to the lives of Nigerian workers or add value to the economy itself generally because of current living conditions. This move, however, is going to be counterproductive because it's going to worsen an already bad situation. What do you say to people who think that, listen, this is not going to cure any ailment that we're dealing with right now, it is only going to worsen it?
It's obviously wrong to think in that line, and I think that is a position I can see the Senate President, that is a position is following, that our demand will cripple the economy, it could lead to unemployment. Obviously, what led us to where we are is bad economic choices, bad policy choices. You could remember when this government came into power, the first thing they did was to remove subsidy from the petrol product, and that has multiplier effect. Many sectors have now collapsed. Transportation sector has collapsed, and that because of the value chain in that transportation, that is where food items are transported. Now the price of good and service has gone up. People cannot move. Even workers find it difficult to transport themselves to work. And what government promises are empty promises in terms of providing alternative, like CNG buses, to cushion those effects. All those were just mere promises. So it's not actually the workers' welfare, workers' better living conditions that cripple the economy, but rather bad economic policies. What we have seen over the last 1 year is increases in regressive taxes, taxing people more, as well as increases in the basic services such as the electricity and also the removal of subsidy. So these things have really pushed us into the brink of collapse of the economy, and the people's welfare is no longer the priority in the government policy pursuit.
Right. I was actually not necessarily talking about the figures that are being negotiated right now, but I'm talking about how the industrial action itself helps your cause, helps the organized labor achieve what it is trying to do. I mean, if you shut down the economy, it means, the slowdown that we're already witnessing is probably going to multiply because of the inactivity for God knows how long the indefinite strike action might last. So that is the question there. Is this a solution? Is going on strike going to solve anything?
Yeah, going on strike actually is aimed at bringing the social partners to the table, and also is a call to action for the government, because it has shown lack of sensitivity of the government to do the needful. Why is it that it's taking us this long, that it is now government is making this course? Why is it taking us this long? This thing is not something that has started today. For the over 3 months, we are on the same issue. And as I said at earlier, even during the May Day, we made our position clear and known to the federal government that within this period, we want you to exhaust everything possible to make sure that we arrive at an acceptable wage flow that is acceptable to Nigerian workers and acceptable to all employers, and the necessary processes are passed in terms of enacting the law and assenting by the president. But the government brought us where we are because of its sluggish attitude and lack of commitment to ensure that we arrive at an acceptable wage.
The government went from 48,000 naira, the first initial offer it made, to 60,000. You went from 615,000 to 494,000 or thereabout. It doesn't look like you're close to a solution at all, as far as the give and take is concerned of negotiations. I mean, 60,000 to 495,000 or so. I mean, it doesn't look like you're even close to a middle ground. But then we also have to consider the impact it is going to have on the private sector, because we've spoken to them who, are obviously part of the negotiations themselves. The Nigeria Employers Council Consultative Association, I beg your pardon, have also said that they have their own thresholds also. There's a threshold that businesses cannot afford. Like they do have their own red line. That if you go beyond this, you're going to have to deal with more businesses shutting down or layoffs, which will be counterproductive to everything that organized labor is doing. So, as far as the numbers go, is there any room for compromise on labor's part? Because what you're asking for is reasonable as far as living wage is concerned. However, when you look at the numbers, when you look at the books of the government, it is not practical, is it?
Actually, there is a way out. The way out is if the figures are negotiated, not imposition. Because what parameter are you using to give workers a pension of 43,000 naira, later 60,000 naira? What are the parameters? That is most important. You can't just come and give people a poverty wage, or you impose it on the people. You have to discuss what does that figure entails. As we provided from our own side based on our analysis, what it takes a person with minimum of 3 children to survive is that figure we have submitted of 630,000 naira and 50,000 naira. I beg your pardon. So this is, we have made analysis. So now government is making an offer of 60,000 naira. We want to know what is how do they arrive at that offer of 60,000 naira? That is most important. Not just take it or leave it. That is not the faith. That is not the basis upon which a tripartite framework is pursued.
But I mean, the labor knows, because of years of, we can say, mismanagement of the economy, misfortune and everything like that, Nigeria's finances are not particularly in a great shape right now. And it goes without saying that even the 18,000 to 30,000 naira shift, a lot of the states have had trouble trying to pay that. We can always question the political willingness or lack of it from some of these governors to actually pay. However, when it comes to this wage bill, we're not just dealing with the coffers of the government. We're also talking about the private sector. Do you think the private sector can afford what you want for Nigerian workers?
Yeah, obviously, you mentioned the issue of political will. It's actually the political will. There is no political will to implement. That is why we had even problems with some states for the previous wage states like Zamfara State, Anambra State. We have Kogi State. These are some of the states. Even the federal government has highlighted those that were not able, did not respect the previous wage law. So political will is very important. Recently, we have seen even a state government in Edo has even made workers' wage as minimum wage as 75,000. To tell you, these are states that also get the same allocation from the same sources. And if you look at the political office holders, whether it is Jigawa, it is Anambra, it is Ebonyi, they receive the same salaries and emolument as political office holders. But when it comes to the worker, always the issue, the debate is that we cannot afford to pay. But what of the wastages that are taking place? The way governance has become very expensive. These are the issues which we should talk about. How do we address leakages in the way we really manage the economy? These are the fundamental issues we should talk about, the issues of governance. These are the issues we should talk about, how to reduce wastages, and so we can use those leakages to be able to have a productive workforce that could serve this country and that will be relevant for nation building.
Yeah, but on the point about the private sector, because this negotiations is binding on both public and private sector, right? And for some people, you're hyper-focused on the government side, knowing that the government can, afford to bend over backwards to, meet you halfway or things like that. However, when it comes to businesses, you're talking about private equity here. Yeah. There are some businesses that, no matter how hard you try, they cannot afford to stay in business if they pay these exorbitant amount to workers. Where's the compromise there to say, okay, we're not trying to also take businesses out of operations by asking for X amount, because we know, given the current conditions, it's not feasible. Where is that negotiation at?
Yeah, thank you very much. You see, as I said, minimum wage is that wage floor you arrive at. Once you arrive at it, various stakeholders, be it private sector or the state government, will go back. That is why we have at the state level, we also have a joint public service negotiation council where they look at other parameters to be able to implement those wages. So in the private sector also, private sector employers have various private sector council where they negotiate with their employers after a benchmark has been set up. So once a benchmark, and the most important thing is commitment. Government is leading in the discussion. Once a commitment is there and all parties agreed on that parameter, you set the wage floor at the national level, then each sectors will also go back and negotiate with the respective employers based on the various indicators, be it in the public and or at the state, or as well as in the private sector. But the stalemate is the fact that we are not even able to arrive at the national benchmarking that could give space for those at the private sector as well as those at the state to be able to discuss with their respective employers.
Okay, and in talking about the body language, let's talk about it, because it feels like Labour and government are talking about two different things at the same time. We're driving in two different directions apparently. The government is talking about a minimum wage, and in that soundbite we did hear the president of the NLC, Joe Ajero, talk about living wage. What are you actually negotiating for, a minimum wage or living wage? Because there are differences between the two.
Yeah, before you arrive at a minimum wage, the whole philosophy is that it is very important to understand the parameters that will guide you for you to be able to give a worker a wage that could guarantee a reproductive and decent life. So it is in that light that the NLC or the organized labor come up with the 650 figures and with clear analysis of what it entails. So that could be the basis for which, even if you are discussing a minimum wage, you have a parameter, you could see it. But when you come and say, I'm going to give you X amount without any analysis of what it entails.
Your 615,000 naira proposal is a living wage, isn't it?
What it guarantees a worker is very important to see that what will be enough for a worker. It's not something that even within that you will even save something for future emergencies and the rest. But if you said there must be a starting point, that is the important question. And you could remember, even the president made it clear when he became the president, he wants to guarantee a living wage for Nigerians. And even during the May Day when the vice president was there, the government is committed to the realization of a living wage for Nigerian workers. And you could remember even the House of Reps, the Speaker of the House of Reps made it clear that you can't eradicate corruption in the country. You can't have a kind of better provision of public services and attitude without having a living wage. So all this, it is in tandem with the realization of what the government promises Nigerians.
And in talking about what is going on right now as we speak, where this emergency closed-door meeting is taking place with the leadership of the National Assembly, let me get your take on their contributions, because over the past few years we've seen their involvement in negotiations with ASU, negotiations with Labour, especially during the Buhari administration, and so on and so forth. Give me your take on what the organized labor thinks about the National Assembly and its involvement in these processes, because they do have a role to play, even though they're not directly involved in the negotiations. What is the expectation going into the meeting that is currently taking place between the leadership of the organized labor and the leadership of the National Assembly, as well as representatives of the federal government? Our expectation is that the National Assembly, in our previous negotiations and engagement of the NLC and also affiliate, they played a prominent role in being in the middle to be able to bring the attention of the government and to also interface with the labor.
And the reason why we hold them in high esteem is because these are the representative of the people. They should be able to tell the government what it is. So their interface, we hope that their intervention will be relevant and will be useful for bringing the government back to the table and to be able to do the needful. That is what we expect. But the NEC has, of both the Nigeria Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress, have already taken a decision. We hope that the intervention of the National Assembly will be able to have impact on the executive arm of the government to be able to do the needful, to conclude the process and have a minimum wage that is acceptable by all the parties.
So essentially what you're saying is, regardless of what they agree to in this meeting tonight, there's no going back on the strike action commencing tomorrow.
Yeah, the strike action is obviously a decision of the National Executive Council of the Nigeria Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress, which is commencing by the midnight of Sunday. So until the neck of the NLC decide otherwise.
Okay, so give me a sense, when you say indefinite strike action, does that close the door for the negotiations? How does it exactly work? While you're on strike, you still want to talk to the government about the minimum wage, or how does this work?
Yeah, as noted by our leaders, you could see both the president of NLC or as we are trade unions, we are not averse to negotiation. In fact, that is our character. We are negotiating agents. So definitely, as we commence the industrial action, those are often to come back and conclude the process. That is what we want. We don't want it to drag. We want the government to be faithful, to be committed, so that we conclude the process. As you know, the 30,000 minimum wage has already expired in the 18th of April, and we are now in June. So we need a new wage regime that will really cater for the needs and aspiration of Nigerian workers, because people are really suffering. People could not afford to actually take care of their basic life necessities because of the existing economic hardship, ambition as a result of the various policies that government enacted. So the minimum wage could serve as a cushioning effect for a worker to have a succor in the midst of the economic challenges.
And also give me a sense of how this decision of the NEC comes about, because we also are hearing some rumblings that there are people who are not necessarily on board with this whole idea of shutting down the economy. Is the organized labor speaking with one voice with regards to what comes next?
Yeah, the organized labor is speaking with one voice. You could see at our press conference when we issued the communique, both the president of the NLC and the president of TUC were there, and they represent their various trade union centers. And as you know, the National Executive Council comprises both the state chairpersons of the trade unions of both NLC and TUC, and of course the affiliates. These are the presidents and general secretaries of all the industrial unions. These are the people that matter, people that take the decision. So the decision is taken by all. It is therefore owned by all, and these are the people that could actually direct their workers in their respective workplaces to down tool.
Right, okay. There's a lot more to unpack, there's a lot more to discuss, especially looking at where we found ourselves today, a familiar situation. Most Nigerians can agree. We've been here before several times in the past, and it looks like a cycle that continues to repeat itself over and over again. We're looking at the state of the nation, especially with the impact of the not so productive negotiations so far between the organized labor and the government and other members of the tripartite committee, because to date we still have not seen an agreed figure that everybody is happy with, leading to this imminent nationwide strike action that is going to commence by midnight June 3rd, 2024. You can be part of the conversation if you want to chime in, if you have a question from our guest, the head of education and training at the NLC headquarters. And of course, you can weigh in and have your say with regards to the negotiations, the numbers that have been negotiated, what is the offer that is on the table, as well as many other issues. Where do you also stand with regards to the strike action being the major tool in the toolbox of the organized labor when it comes to getting their demands met? More on that on Sunday Politics after the break. All right, welcome back to the program. A quick reminder, you can watch the show on the go by joining our YouTube and Facebook live streams. Follow us across our social media platforms to catch up and stay up to date with some of our contents. And you can also visit our website, trusttv.com, for the latest news and documentaries. We're talking about the national minimum wage negotiations that have reached an impasse between the organized labor, the federal government, the state government, and basically the tripartite committee that has been tasked to look at a review of the new national minimum wage that is constitutionally supposed to be reviewed after every 5 years. The current one has elapsed. It's still at 30,000 now. That is what is still pretty much in effect. However, the negotiations have stalled, have not yielded the necessary fruits that Nigerians would love to see, because as things stand, the organized labor is not going to accept the 60,000 naira that was the latest offer that was put on the table as far as the negotiations of the tripartite committee is concerned. Our phone lines are open. If you want to join the conversation, feel free to do so. We'd love to get your take on this developing issue. The numbers are showing on your TV screen. I believe we have our first caller on the line, so let's speak to our first caller. Hello, good evening. Welcome to the program.
Hello, good evening, sir.
Good evening. Welcome to the program. Your name and where you're calling from.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you.
My name is Goodness. I'm calling from Kaduna.
You say Goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Goodness.
It's happening in this country. We are just tired. We are just tired of everything. Today I entered market to buy tomato problem, to buy foodstuff problem. We are hungry. Is it until we die that our president will do something, please? We are hungry. Please, if you should help us and tell him. I heard that he changed national anthem. That is not what we need at this time. That's not what we need at this time. Someone that is on fire is not supposed to be pursuing rats. We are dying of hunger. Prices of things are killing us. Many of us can't even afford to feed anymore. Many families. Today, a woman came to my house to beg me for rice, 2 cups of rice, so that she can cook for her children. Me too, myself, I can hardly feed. But I have no option because I have to give her. This whole thing is tiring. Tomato, you can't buy tomato, you can't buy pepper, you can't buy rice, you can't buy nothing. What is all this in this country? These people should come to our aid now. They should do something. Is it until we die that they will do something? We are hungry. We are hungry. Hi. This is too much. It's becoming unbearable.
Thank you so much, Goodness, for joining the conversation. I can understand your emotion, and I can also appreciate, your frustration about this particular development. But thank you so much for adding your voice, and I'm pretty happy that she highlighted the certain key issues that most people are going to re-echo when they call in, which is, the impact of some of the policy directions of the Tinubu administration has pushed Nigerians almost to the brink of depression, so to say, and all of its attendant consequences. Let's speak to our next caller. Hello, good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Who's on the line and where are you calling from?
Olutoye is on the line from Zaria.
Sonny from Zaria.
Olutoye from Zaria.
Olufemi from Zaria. Please turn down the volume of your TV set and go ahead.
We thank God. We thank the Labour Congress for what they are doing. In fact, and God will help them.
Please turn down the volume.
My own contribution to this program. Is that you see, if the Labour stand on 100,000, to be collect in the
Okay, we're going to have to move on from that. Olufemi, call back again. But just a quick reminder, the rules of engagement, if you're calling in, turn down the volume of your TV set so that we do not have to deal with the interference. The feedback loop is not making for good conversation. So please turn down the volume of your TV set. Call back again if you're interested in finishing your thoughts. But he did talk about 100,000. I think we'll circle back to that in just a moment. Hello, good evening, and welcome to the program. Hello, good evening. Okay, we've lost that connection. But what are your thoughts, Dr. Muttaqa, regarding what other people have talked about? The 100,000 is a number that has been going around. But before we get your thoughts on that, let's speak to our next caller. Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening. Okay. Multiple times on this and many other platforms on Trust TV, a lot of people have called in and say, listen, if the federal government goes up to 100,000, we think the labor should accept it. What are your thoughts about, if at all, the organized labor is willing, it has a number that it is thinking about, that if the government perhaps moves a little bit, is going to be acceptable?
Yeah, in the negotiations, it's akin to say it is like a pregnant sky. You don't know whether it will rain now or not, or you don't know the exact. But what is at the back of the mind of our leaders is to negotiate a wage that is not a poverty wage. To negotiate
what
a
is
wage.
A poverty wage, by the way?
A poverty wage is typical of a wage that when you collect it, you instead to feel that you have been you achieve something better, but it's keeping you poor by the day. Why is it a poverty wage keeping you poor? As you collect the wage, you go to the market, things have price of goods and services have skyrocketed. Typical of what the first caller has said. People are really hungry. You go to the market today, and what you see is different when you go to the market the next day. So that is really the terrible economic frame.
Some experts say what organized labor should be pushing for shouldn't just be the nominal increase in salaries, but for structural issues like transportation costs, for instance, all of these causal factors to be addressed. Instead of asking for more money, let's address the gaps in transportation, let's address the gaps in energy, let's address the gaps in healthcare, in education, in the pricing regime, food production, and all of these things. That is what the organized labor should be pushing for, instead of this nominal increase in the wage, for instance. Because at the end of the day, if inflation continues to go up, it doesn't matter how much you're paid, because you're still going to have to pay more when you go to the market.
Yeah, we are, I think, saying the same thing. If you look at
but you're stuck with asking for more money at the moment.
Of course we ask for money that could guarantee you to be able to access those services. But in all of our advocacies over the years has been a regime of universal social protection for all, in terms of our campaigns and policy intervention on healthcare, very important, issues around transportation, education, and of course mass housing that workers can afford. All these are fragment part of what we call for, because we know no matter how much you earn, if you cannot afford all this, it becomes a problem, because we will find ourselves in a situation whereby you produce things, but you yourself as a worker, you cannot afford them. So our total call, that is why in the agreement we signed with the government last year, was to address systemic challenges in terms of transportation. Government has committed to do that, but up to this hour, it remains a promise in terms of providing public mass transportation to be able to transport workers, because transportation itself could cushion the effect of many aspects of our in terms of movement of people, movement of goods and services. And you could remember on the 13th of last month also, we have indicated all the discourse and transmission companies, all in an advocacy to talk about energy democracy. You shouldn't be taxing people, because energy is central to any development. So this discrimination in terms of band A, band B, band C, we said it should be scrapped. So let us reverse the increases in the hike in tariffs, because small scale industries and even bigger, they thrive on electricity. So if it is not there, many people will lose their jobs. So we are concerned about the increasing rise in unemployment and collapse of industries, and many people are out of job.
Okay, let's get back to the phone lines. Hello, good evening and welcome.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Ebeko DK. I'm calling from Port Harcourt.
DK from Port Harcourt. Go ahead, please.
Yes. Honestly, I have heard what the Labour man is saying. He is trying to defend the Labour. Of course, Labour is trying to act for an unrealistic salary for a very long time. They should go for National Assembly, tell National Assembly to have a uniform salary scale in Nigeria, so that everybody, including the National Assembly members, should know how much is their salary, so that this thing can be controlled. How can you ask government to pay you 400 and something thousand, and while people are dying on the street? You know how many people that died because of this government, this removal of petroleum subsidy? I don't think that the people that is less than 15% can get 400 and something thousand naira, while the 85% doesn't have anything. I'm moving around the street. Go for a very good negotiation, a holistic one.
Okay,
we start from somewhere.
Yeah,
so,
Mr. DK, do you have an amount that you think should be realistic?
My name is Ebeko DK, not DK.
Okay. I beg your pardon for that. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. The amount is not the question. If the federal government can liaise with the Labour, then we have a uniform. That's what I'm saying. A uniform salary. If you hire a driver, you know how much you pay a driver. That's everywhere the driver is, whether it's in the main PC or in the private sector. You don't just ask for only your own. This thing will not work. It's not going to work. If venture, federal government started with the 40, well, if other states have gone into 70, if you get to that 70,000, you stop there and start asking other states that will be beneficial to other people, like refineries should start working. My question is, who are they defending?
Right.
Where is the refineries we are buying this petroleum outside the country? Who owns them? How are they coming in? That makes our own not working. Singapore doesn't have crude. They have plenty of refineries. And they are making well, buying it. So ask for those things. It will help Nigeria.
Right.
Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you very much for your thoughtful contribution. So he's a critic and a supporter at the same time. He thinks Labour is going about it the wrong way. Even though I think Labour has highlighted some of those issues with the refineries and things like that. But he's saying, essentially, that what you're asking for is unrealistic. Even in the most ideal situation, it will be unhealthy for the government to give you what you are demanding. Because he also believes that the workforce itself is not significant compared to the population of the country. What are your thoughts about, what he had to say?
Yeah, this is just a simplistic argument. One, you should know that wage plays a prominent role in stimulating the economy. When you give a worker his wage, how does he spend it? That money goes to the market in terms of foodstuffs. It goes to the healthcare, it goes to the education and the transportation. So those minute segment he described of the society, their earning has multiplier effect on large segment of the population. And each worker also has dependents, both immediate and extended. So the wage plays a prominent role in stimulating the economy. We all know the time in this country when a new wage regime was established. The whole market was actually stimulated, and the economy will work. So that is the wage has a role in terms of even affecting the larger segment of society, the informal sector and the rest, because that is where workers earn their living. Because the issue is to understand that market can adjust. The person selling, even in the import, can adjust price, but worker cannot adjust. You have to wait till 5 years, while the economic environment has really eroded the value of what you earn.
Okay, let's go back to the phone lines. Hello, good evening. Welcome to the program. Your name and where you're calling from. Hello, good evening.
Yeah, good evening, please.
Welcome to the program. Your name and where you're calling from, please.
Yes,
My name is Usman Anivasa.
Usman, where are you calling from, Usman?
Yes, I'm calling from Kaduna.
Okay, go ahead, please.
From Kaduna.
Go ahead.
Yes. You see, I think I support Labour only on the electricity tariff.
All right. What about the other stuff?
Yes, but however, you see, just like one of the callers said, what is the percentage of people that of a civil servant? And they don't think about the inflation that will ensue by the rest of those so-called wages. Right from the time goes, anytime there's increment in wages, the prices of things will skyrocket. Then how will common man cope up? So I think Labour should also be realistic and think of even before how many states were able to pay the 30,000 naira minimum wages. Now we are talking about 400-something thousand. So I think to be on the list, I think that 60,000 naira that federal government accept should be the thing.
You think the 60,000 should be enough? Labour should accept it?
Otherwise, sir, you see, the rateage will increase, everything will increase. Then there will be unemployment, serious unemployment.
Right. Usman, thank you so much.
Unemployment, because the people will not be able to afford. You see,
Usman, I think I did get the gist. For want of time, we're going to have to end the conversation there, but thank you most kindly for calling in. And I'm afraid Usman is going to be our last caller for the program tonight. Very telling. He said there is going to be a multiplier effect. You get more money, it's going to translate into you paying more for rent and every other thing else. So we're back to ground zero. What are your thoughts about what he had to say? You think 60,000 is enough? It's a fair offer that you should accept it?
No, it's not fair. That is why we reject it. The organized labor reject it, and we call on the government to do the needful. And the second thing is to say the other way around, which is not what creates the circumstance we are now. It's bad policy choices. Last year, a time like this, what is the cost of basic commodities, the rice, the price of petrol per liter, the kg of cylinder, all those things have dramatically risen, and now our inflation rate is almost reaching 32%. So to tell you, we didn't increase wage, but due to policy choices of the government, the economic situation of the country has worsened. Liberalization of our currency regime, all those, because we are an importing nation, all those constitute the problem, not what the workers are asking now. Even prior to the increase in wages, the economic policy framework of the government has really crippled the economy. So it means we have to have a rethink of our economic policies.
Okay, judging by what has happened, the progression in the numbers that you have been offered in the negotiations, the government went from 48,000 to be at par with what the private sector offered of 54,000. From 54,000, we went to 60,000. It doesn't look like we're going to get anywhere close to what you are asking for. What is your projection about how this whole, affair ends? What would the conclusion look like? Is it going to, go the way of Labour? Because government looks like, it's going to stick to its guns and say, listen, we can't afford what you're asking us. Your final thoughts?
Yeah, my final thought is that, as we asked, is that let's reconvene and let's see commitment. As I told you, minimum wage discussions are not monologue, are not by one party. Let's see commitment from the side of the government, their representative, people with mandate to be represented in those committees to be present. Let's see commitment from the representative of the state governments, because these are also a segment of the society where large workforce are. So once we have those commitments, then let's negotiate, not impose. Because all these figures you are saying by the governments, they are not negotiated, but they are just say, take this. What is the parameter for me to take this? You also said,
give us this.
Yeah, so what we want is, first, let's see commitment in the discussions, and let's have people with mandate to be present in those discussions, representative of the governors, as well as representative of the government from key ministries with mandate, because over the last few days, what we see is only the Minister of State for Labor there, and the Minister of Labor, State for Labor play also a conciliatory role in the process. So we need people with the Ministry of Finance, people whose mandate, the representative of the state governors, and also the key representative of the private sector.
So essentially,
those commitments are needed so that we can negotiate rather than impose a wage regime.
Essentially, you're saying the government should take it serious.
That's it.
Okay. Dr. Muttaqa Yusha'u, thank you so much for joining us on the program tonight. I appreciate you for stopping by.
Thank you
very much for your time and the analysis. And of course, you as always, thank you for your time and company. For those of you who took time to call in and to share your thoughts, we always appreciate your contributions as always. We'll be back next week live and exclusive as always on Trust TV. Until then, my name is Abdullahi Ahmed. From myself and the rest of the team, thank you for your time tonight and good night.